One for Mum, one for Dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows.
I want an economy that works for people, not the other way around.
We'll just end up being a third-rate economy, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
G'day, I'm Ebony Bennett. 2025 is the 50th anniversary of one of the most contentious events in Australian political history, the dismissal of Prime Minister Gough Whitlam. In the decades since, rumours have swirled around possible US government involvement in the dismissal, but nothing has ever been proven. In this special episode, Dr Emma Shortis, the Australian Institute's Director of International and Security Affairs, examines the Australia-America relationship under the Whitlam government and the politics of the renewal of Pine Gap, a joint US-Australia intelligence base near Alice Springs. We also hear the previously untold story of Dr Liz Cham, an executive assistant in Whitlam's office, who shares her story of handing over a letter to a mysterious American official just before the dismissal. This episode first aired on After America, our weekly podcast series on US and global politics, on the 24th of November 2025. I hope you enjoy the show.
We are in a battle for the soul of America.
This is a fraud on the American public.
The Senate and the House of Representatives simultaneously have been fulfilled.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
That might be the most famous line ever spoken by an Australian politician. The dismissal of the Whitlam government on the 11th of November 1975 is one of the most dramatic moments in Australia's political history. In the 50 years since, there's been a lot written and said about it. But the individual story you're about to hear has never been told.
The Prime Minister needs you in the Melbourne office because he needs to dictate a letter. Now that letter, later that morning, he did dictate it to me. I walked down Collins Street and I handed it to a CIA agent.
I'm Emma Shortis. Welcome to this special episode of After America. Now, let's meet the woman at the centre of this previously untold story.
My name's Elizabeth Cham. My current occupation, I'm a fellow at UTS in the business school.
Dr Elizabeth Cham is a highly credentialed scholar who came from humble beginnings.
I left school at 15, like most working class migrant girls at that time. The nuns had just started a commercial college, so I did shorthand and typing. And I did that for many years. And then as an adult student and with the Whitlam, partly, I think, sort of that sense that the Whitlam government might do something about education, I went to uni. I think I was all of, 24 or something, 23. When I finished, I applied for a job in the Prime Minister's press office as an executive assistant.
Whitlam reforms, including free higher education, opened new vistas for working class women like Liz.
I was a huge fan before I came to the office.
Months after applying for a job in Whitlam's office, Liz landed a role as an executive assistant to his principal private secretary.
This is July, the Monday after the fairly disastrous Bass by-election, where Labor lost by 17%. So I was in the office for those last months of the Whitlam government before he was sacked on November the 11th. Arriving at that time, and the chaos was sort of building.
But it sounds like you had quite a diverse role. You were typing up all kinds of things and almost at the centre of everything that was happening in the government at that time.
Yeah. I was sitting outside his office in a little broom cupboard and, everything happened there. When he was away from the office, it had a totally different feel. And then even though you didn't see him, you just knew he was back. He was an extraordinary human being. He was a colossus. and I don't think we're going to see anyone like him again for a long time.
Liz had a degree in politics from the University of Melbourne. It was the unusual combination of that degree with her typing skills that put her by the PM's side.
Because I now had a degree, as well as typing and shorthand, I was sort of used in all sorts of ways. Men in those days didn't type. It was women's work. Given it was women's work, I quite often travelled with him. I would go to, Sydney most weekends because he might want a letter, and I was there to do that. So what I always thought people would see me as being stupid for, which was the typing and the shorthand, in fact, was what meant I was with him those particular days as well, just before the sacking and on to the sacking.
Liz recalls going with Whitlam to an event in Melbourne on a Friday night, just days before the dismissal.
The Prime Minister is due in Melbourne. He's going to go to a huge multicultural ball in the Fitzroy Town Hall. When we get there, there's a huge crowd outside. This is Friday the 7th. Huge crowd, like he's a pop star. He gets the reception of a pop star. I can't remember any other Prime Minister anything like it. And I remember the police saying to him, "Prime Minister, don't go into that crowd." Well, of course, off he went into the crowd. And then he went inside, and again, the same sort of treatment, It was such a sort of a happy occasion. And everywhere we went, actually, he was dealing with people who were committed to him as Prime Minister. And never for a moment, never ever for a moment did I think anyone was going to sack him.
After the Friday night event at Fitzroy Town Hall, Liz spent the weekend in Ballarat visiting her family.
And on Monday morning, very early, my mother, in this tiny little fibro house, said to me, "There's a man on the phone for you." And I thought, a man on the phone for me, The man turned out to be Sir Arthur Tang, Head of Defence.
This was on the 10th of November, the day before Whitlam was sacked by the Governor-General.
Arthur Tang said to me, "Elizabeth, the Prime Minister is on his way to Melbourne from Canberra. He needs you in the office, so you must leave and for the Melbourne office now." Now, I have not thought about why Sir Arthur Tang would ring such a junior person in the Prime Minister's office ever. And it was a time when bureaucrats were very powerful, as you know. They were mandarins. They couldn't be dismissed by a Prime Minister. They had permanency.
So just to be clear, Sir Arthur Tang, Secretary of the Department of Defence, called you at your mother's house and nothing like that had ever happened before?
Ever. What normally would have happened is Denise Darlow, the Prime Minister's appointment secretary, would have rung me to say, "Liz, the holiday's over, the boss needs you, get to the Melbourne office." That's what normally would have happened. And as I thought about it now, I thought, why would Sir Arthur Tang, ring me? He did say to me, "The Prime Minister needs you in the Melbourne office because he needs to dictate a letter." Now, that letter, later that morning, he did dictate it to me. I walked down Collins Street and I handed it to a CIA agent up the steps of the Hotel Australia. I remember that very clearly. And it was about whether he would re-sign the lease on Pine Gap.
So, on the day before the dismissal, as Liz tells the story, Gough Whitlam dictates a letter about Pine Gap, and Liz Cham says she hand-delivers it to a CIA agent at a Collins Street hotel. Since the dismissal, there have been lots of allegations about CIA involvement in Whitlam's downfall. Christopher Boyce, the US defence contractor who was jailed for selling secrets to the Russians, claims to have decoded CIA cables showing the spy agency wanted Whitlam gone.
Well, yes, Mr. Whitlam was not a popular figure at all, to say the least.
Did they say why?
Well, first of all, it's politics, socialistic, and the fact that inquiries were being made about the base. Mr. Whitlam was by wanting to know what was going on there and by publicizing it was compromising the integrity of the project. Mr. Whitlam's government was a threat.
That's the way they described it?
Yes.
These allegations about CIA involvement have always been just that, allegations. That's not really surprising, given what we know about the CIA's involvement in regime change and attempted regime change all over the world, from Iran to Cuba, and during Whitlam's time in office, in Chile.
Yeah.
Mr. Sigler.
Yes, sir. Have you said anything, Ron, with regard to the ITT in Chile? How did you handle it?
The State Department dealt with that today.
Oh, they did?
Yes, sir.
What did they do? Deny it?
They denied it, but they were cautious on how they dealt with the Corey statement because they were afraid that might backfire.
What did Corey say?
Well, Corey said that he had received instructions to do anything short of a Dominican-type, alleged to have said that.
Corey did?
Right.
So how'd that get out? He put that out?
Well, Anderson received that from some source. Al Haig is sitting with me now.
Oh, yeah.
It was a report contained in an IT&T thing, but...
Well, he was instructed to.
Well, but...
I hoped it, but he just failed. That's his main problem. He should have kept all the enemy from getting in.
Well, in any event, State has denied it today, and they referred to your comments about Latin America and Chile, and so you just refer to that on that one.
Fine, okay.
Yes, sir.
But when it comes to Australia, these allegations have never met an adequate standard of proof, and they still don't. We don't have evidence of involvement. That doesn't necessarily mean that that information does not exist somewhere. As Australian historian Professor Jenny Hocking has found, getting information related to the dismissal can be an incredibly difficult, drawn-out process. Australia's anti-democratic freedom of information and archival release processes have a lot to answer for. It is on the public record that Whitlam had a very testy relationship with the US President at the time, Richard Nixon. A lot of that tension swirled around the Whitlam government's immediate withdrawal of Australian forces from America's war in Vietnam. There was also significant tension over the renewal of the agreement around Pine Gap, the joint Australian-US intelligence facility located just outside Alice Springs. So we certainly have evidence that there was tension in the relationship, and we have a lot of evidence about the behaviour of US President Richard Nixon. But that tension was resolvable, and Whitlam had no reason to think that it would be a lingering problem. While Liz remembers typing up a letter about Pine Gap, the contents may have been uncontroversial. It may also have been about something else. It may have happened differently. Until and unless that letter is found, we just can't corroborate the story. And it's possible we may never know. Liz, what was in the letter?
I remember it was about Pine Gap. That bit I remember. I just wish I could remember what he said, but I can't. I have racked my brain and I cannot remember whether he was saying in that letter that he would re-sign the lease or whether he was saying something else. I certainly remember that it was about Pine Gap.
Liz, you don't remember exactly what was in the letter, but you've said you were certain it was about Pine Gap. And you've spent the last couple of months trying to chase the letter down. Have you found it?
No. I have spent many months trying to find that letter. I assumed that it probably, would be in the Australian Archive. So I've spent quite a bit of time there and I've had the most extraordinary level of help and support from those extraordinary women who work there. Truly extraordinary. It's not there.
The night before the dismissal, Gough Whitlam attended a Lord Mayor's banquet in Melbourne. Liz joined him on the PM's plane afterwards to fly back to Canberra, along with the opposition leader, Malcolm Fraser, and some of his colleagues.
Because Tullamarine had a curfew, at the dinner, the Prime Minister invited Malcolm Fraser, also McMahon, also Peacock, and also Doug Anthony, and Philip.
So all members of the Liberal opposition.
All members of the Liberal opposition who had been at the dinner.
Liz has shown me a copy of the flight manifest. the names of the opposition MPs Malcolm Fraser, Billy McMahon, Andrew Peacock, Doug Anthony and Philip Lynch were all added by hand.
So they were generously invited by the Prime Minister onto the flight, and while they were on the flight, the Prime Minister usually tries to go to sleep. While they were on the flight, they were talking, Anthony and Fraser, Lynch, Anthony and Fraser. I thought they were being very considerate of the Prime Minister because they were being very quiet. I now realise they were being conspiratorial. So it seems to me very Shakespearean. He generously offers them a ride home. On the way home, they're stabbing him in the back.
To be clear, so you're on the plane, but you can't hear
what they're saying. I could certainly hear Peacock swearing, very, very drunk, swearing in a way that I'd never heard about his hatred for Malcolm Fraser.
So you land in Canberra, Liz, and presumably go straight to bed because it's very late.
Very late.
So you wake up in Canberra on the Tuesday, and how does that day unfold for you?
Well, the first thing is that the drivers, Bobby Beedman, who'd picked up Fraser and Anthony that night, you know, when we came back from Melbourne, he comes in and says to me that he heard, I mean, he's telling a number of people, not just me, he'd heard them talking in the back of the car, what if John doesn't do it tomorrow? And he thought, who should I ring? It's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. Who is John? What have I heard? And of course, by the next day in the afternoon, it was all very clear.
At about 1 p.m, on November the 11th, 1975, Whitlam went to see the Governor-General to seek a half-Senate election. Instead, John Kerr sacked him.
He comes out from seeing the Governor-General. Bob Miller, his driver, Bob says to him, God, that was quick, what happened? And he says to Bob, handing him a letter, he sacked me. And Bob says, well, you go back and effing sack him and tear this letter up. But Gough Whitlam was a constitutional lawyer. He believed in the rule of law. And he didn't do what Bob Miller suggested. Instead, he asked Bob to drive to the lodge where he ordered a steak.
Whitlam later quipped that he'd had the condemned man's hearty meal after the execution.
I walk into the office, there's just pandemonium. Where have you been? It's about just after 1:30. I said, I've been in the Rose Garden having my lunch. We've been sacked. Total chaos and pandemonium. I couldn't comprehend it.
In that pandemonium, maybe the record of the letter Liz typed and handed to a CIA agent was lost. 50 years on, she's left to ponder whether it, and the CIA, played any kind of role.
Whitlam himself has said publicly, at the time and after, that he felt the only collusion was national. He didn't think there was any international aspect to his dismissal. But because I took this letter to the CIA agent, I don't think enough has ever been thought or written about the CIA. And we all know things don't happen for one reason, especially a sacking of a Prime Minister in a democracy.
Thanks so much for joining us for this special episode. After America is supported by the Andrew Farron Foundation. I'm Emma Shortis. Thanks for listening.